I warned them once. At sunrise on a Saturday in late October, a black Chevrolet Suburban with no plates and windows darker than a moonless night rolled straight past my NO trespassing sign like the red letters were nothing more than a suggestion for doors opened in perfect unison. For people stepped onto my gravel like they had a deed in their pocket and got on speed dial. 5 minutes later, 2 of them were tasting my dirt. One was running for his life. And the sound of a 12 gauge being racked told the last one that the real war had only just begun. That's the version that blew up online. Short, brutal, legendary. But legends never tell you about the quiet before the storm. The real story started long before that Saturday. It started the day I buried my wife. Sarah died in March. 3 years ago, almost to the day. Cancer doesn't care if you're young, if you're strong, or if you spent 10 years keeping other people alive in places most folks can't pronounce. It took her in 6 months. The doctors called it aggressive. I called it unfair. After the funeral, I couldn't stay in the city anymore. Couldn't walk past her coffee mug still sitting on the counter. Couldn't sleep in a bed that felt half empty. So I did the only thing that made sense. I bought land. 80 acres of high desert paradise in Lassen County, California. Former BLM parcel sold at auction. No covenants. No restrictions. No HOA. Just pine trees, red dirt, and a horizon so wide it felt like God left the gate open. I built the house with my own hands. Poured the foundation the week Sarah's ashes came home in a small cedar box. Every nail I drove, every board I cut, every shingle I laid. I was building something cancer couldn't touch. I named the mare Daisy because Sarah always wanted a chestnut with a blaze. I named the ridge behind the barn Sarah's Ridge because some nights, when the moon is full and the coyotes are quiet, I swear I can feel her standing up there watching over the place. This land remembers her. This land remembers me. And it damn sure doesn't forget when someone tries to take it. That's why, when that black Suburban came down my driveway, I wasn't just defending property. I was defending the only thing left of us. I was out by the corral at 7:03 a.m., pitchfork in hand, tossing alfalfa to Daisy and the 2 geldings. The air smelled like frost and pine sap. The sun was a thin gold line behind the eastern ridge, bleeding light across the frost-tipped grass like spilled honey. Everything was perfect. Then I heard the tires. Slow, deliberate, expensive. I knew the sound of every vehicle that belonged on this road. Jerry's old Ford with a busted muffler, the mail Jeep that rattles like a tin can, even the neighbor's side-by-side when he checks cattle. This wasn't any of them. I set the pitchfork against the fence and walked toward the bend in the driveway. My boots crunched on frost-hardened gravel. My breath fogged in the cold. And then I saw it. Gloss black. No plates. Tinted windows so dark they looked wet. It moved like a shark, smooth, confident, and hungry. It never slowed for the sign. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Survivors will be prosecuted twice. I'd painted that sign myself. Blood-red letters on welded steel. It had been there 3 years and nobody had ever ignored it. Until now. The Suburban stopped 50 yards from the house, right where my gravel turns dark from a decade of hoof prints and tractor oil. The engine kept running. Low, steady, predatory. I stood there in the cold, hands loose at my sides, feeling the old calm settle over me. The same calm that used to come right before we kicked in the door in Fallujah. For doors opened. 3 men stepped out first. Big, thick necks, navy blue polos with some embroidered logo I didn't recognize. Wraparound sunglasses, even though the sun was barely up. The kind of men who get paid by the intimidation, not by the hour. Then she stepped out. Mid-40s. Blonde bob so perfect it looked shellacked. Navy blazer over a white blouse. Heels, actual high heels on my gravel. Tablet clutched like a shield. She smiled the way people smile when they already think they've won. "Good morning," she called, voice bright and sharp enough to cut glass. "You must be Mr. Russell Drake." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at the 4 of them standing on my land like they'd been invited to tea. Finally, I said, "Depends who's asking." She walked toward me, heels clicking. completely ignoring the frost soaking into her slacks. "I'm Karen Seaford," she said, extending a manicured hand I had no intention of shaking. "Disciplinary coordinator for the Silver Creek Ranch Homeowners Association." I let her hand hang in the air. Silver Creek Ranch sat half a mile up the hill. 300 identical beige houses, 3 swimming pools, and more rules than the Marine Corps. People moved there to escape California, only to bring California with them. My land had never been part of it. Not in 1872, when the railroad came through. Not in 1938, when the county redrew the lines. Not in 2021, when I bought it straight from the federal government. Karen's smile didn't waver. "Your parcel," she said, tapping her tablet, "lies within our designated visual influence buffer zone." I felt my eyebrow twitch. "Come again?" "Silver Creek is expanding," she continued, as if I'd asked for details instead of a translation. "Phase 3 construction begins next spring. Future residents on lots 312 through 328 will have direct line of sight to your structures." She said structures the way other people say meth lab. "We've received multiple pre-sale complaints about aesthetic inconsistency," she went on. "Unregistered outbuildings, unauthorized fencing, livestock in view of future million-dollar homes." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, "Ma'am, you're standing on private property you were explicitly warned not to enter. I suggest you turn around." One of the goons, the biggest one, shaved head, neck thicker than Daisy's feed bucket, snorted. "Sir," he said, stepping forward, "we're authorized to conduct perimeter compliance inspections on behalf of the association." I looked him dead in the eye. "Son, the only thing you're authorized to do right now is bleed if you take one more step." The air changed. Karen's smile finally slipped. "Proceed," Karen said. That word hung in the air like the crack of a starter pistol. The tall one moved first. Strode straight onto my porch like he owned it. Phone already recording. The shaved head guy started toward the barn, grabbing the gate chain and rattling it hard enough to make Daisy slam her shoulder against the stall. The third one circled, looking for angles. Karen stood in the middle of my yard, tablet raised like Moses about to part the Red Sea. I gave them one last chance. "You got 5 seconds," I said, voice flat and calm, "to get back in that vehicle and leave." Karen actually laughed. "We're here in an official 5. The tall one reached for my front door handle. 4. Shaved head yanked the chain again. Daisy screamed. 3. Karen opened her mouth to speak. 2. I moved. Not wild. Not angry. Just efficient. I crossed the yard in 4 strides, caught the tall guy's wrist as he touched my door, twisted, and dropped him straight to the porch boards. His phone skittered across the planks and cracked against a railing. Shaved head charged like a bull. I sidestepped, hooked his arm, used his own momentum to plant his face in the dirt. One knee in the middle of his back. Not breaking anything, just reminding him gravity has a sense of humor. The third guy froze halfway to the barn, eyes wide, suddenly remembering he had somewhere else to be. He ran. Karen finally found her voice. "Stop. You can't assault my staff." I stood up slowly, brushed dust off my jeans. They ceased being staff the second they ignored a posted trespass warning and attempted forced entry into my home. I walked to the porch cabinet, the one Sarah used called the insurance policy, and opened it. Inside lay my Remington 870, oiled walnut stock, 28-inch barrel, the same one that rode shotgun with me across half the Middle East. I lifted it gently. Karen's tablet lowered an inch. I worked the action. Chichak. There isn't a sound in the world quite like it. They say it's a universal language for reconsider your life choices. Karen's face went the color of old ash. You're threatening us." "No, ma'am," I said, keeping the muzzle pointed safely at the ground. "I'm preventing you from doing something that would force me to defend my life. There's a difference." The big guy on the ground groaned. The tall one clutched his ribs. The third one was already halfway to the tree line. Karen looked at her broken team, then at the shotgun, then at me. For the first time all morning, she looked small. "Get off my land," I said quietly. They did. The Suburban reversed so fast it fishtailed, spraying gravel like buckshot. I watched the dust settle, then lowered the shotgun and called the sheriff. 15 minutes later, Deputy Bill Myers rolled up with a second cruiser. He took one look at the footage, 3 angles, crystal clear, and shook his head. "Russ," he said, "if I had $1 for every HOA that thought they were the law, I'd retire tomorrow." Karen tried to scream about assault and brandishing. Bill just handed her a trespass citation and told her to have a nice day. I thought it was over. It wasn't even the opening shot. 3 days later, the certified letter arrived. 20 pages of legal venom accusing me of everything from aggravated assault to visual sabotage of community aesthetics. That's when I called Julia Rich, former JAG captain, current badass attorney who specializes in veterans getting screwed by bureaucracy. She listened to the whole story without interrupting once. Then she said, "Russ, sit down." I am sitting. Good. Because what I just found is going to make you smile, the kind of smile you save for when justice shows up wearing steel-toed boots. She pulled every zoning map since 1952. My land wasn't just outside the HOA. It was explicitly exempt federal surplus property. But someone had altered the digital overlay. Someone had manually extended the Silver Creek boundaries in Photoshop and uploaded the fake map to the county viewer. The metadata had a name, Karen Seaford. That was Friday. By Monday, the entire internet had my security footage. By Tuesday, an anonymous email delivered Karen's internal memo. "We need to set a clear example with the holdout. Approach dominant. Record everything. Push for escalation if necessary." By Wednesday, Jeff Slade, the tall guy whose ribs still remember my porch, showed up at my gate with a flash drive and tears in his eyes. "She's blaming us," he said. "Says we went rogue. I've got a little girl. Russ, I'm not going to prison for that woman." The drive contained everything. Texts, voice memos, off-the-books payment records. 30 days later, we walked into Department 3 of the Lassen County Superior Court. The judge was Catherine Muller. Former prosecutor, zero tolerance for nonsense. Jeff testified. The maps were projected. The memo was read aloud. Karen couldn't look up from the table. When the gavel fell, it sounded like freedom. All claims dismissed with prejudice. $47,000 in compensatory and punitive damages. HOA charter suspended pending fraud investigation. Matter referred to the district attorney for criminal filing. Karen Seaford left the courtroom without a word. 3 months later, her house sold at sheriff's auction. 6 months later, the county erected a permanent historical marker at the edge of my property. Federal surplus land, 2021. Exempt from all residential overlays. In perpetuity. I added my own sign underneath. 8 feet wide. 1/4-inch plate steel. Torch cut letters 6 inches deep. Armed. Trained. Protected by the Second Amendment. And the memory of a woman named Sarah. Below that, in smaller letters, "Not in your jurisdiction. Never was. Never will be." Sometimes, on quiet mornings when the frost lies thick and the sun paints the ridge gold, I walk to Sarah's spot with a cup of coffee. I talk to her about the horses, about the new colt, about the day the world tried to take what was ours and discovered some things can't be taken. The wind moves through the grass the same way it did the morning Karen thought she owned the sunrise. Only now the land is quieter, because it knows it's safe, because it knows I'm still here, and because some fights don't end when the enemy runs. They end when the land itself remembers who it belongs to.